Thank you, Suja and Nigel. Okay, the next speaker is someone who should be very familiar to most of us in this community. Dr. Kersten wrote the amazing book Project to Product 4 years ago, which is being used by so many organizations to change how they think about their software development efforts. In this community, we all know how important architecture is to enabling fast flow. Over the last 2 years, I've been exploring with Dr. Kersten and my mentor, Dr. Stephen Spear, on the lesser-known corollary, which is that the architecture and the structure of the organization must be isomorphic. In other words, we can create an organization that is structured so that teams can work independently, where local problems stay local, and amplifies important signals of performance, fully supported by the software architecture. Or we can design an organizational structure that prevents teams from getting done what needs to get done and dampens or extinguishes entirely the signals that leaders need to know that the system is working, regardless of how good the architecture is. I am so excited that Dr. Kersten will be presenting our real-life case study of an organization that he did at his company, Tasktop, the benefits that he expected, what actually happened, and what he did about it. I think this is an important talk because he models so explicitly and so well how we need to think through organizational design. It's something I've rarely seen, but I think it is so important to getting the outcomes that we want. Here's Mick.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mick Kersten. I'm delighted to be joining you virtually from Vancouver. Since founding Tasktop 15 years ago, I spent a lot of time trying to better understand the intersection of organizational design and software architecture. And I personally come from a software background, and I've been helping the organization grow and understanding how these different kinds of modules, which are teams and people and things actually with feelings and aspirations, can actually be structured in a more effective way for the growth and happiness and productivity of every organization. And that's actually what led me to my work on studying flow, how we can better make teams deliver more value to customers and the things that impede that. So over the past few years, I've been working with enterprises making this shift from project to product. And what I've noticed is that many organizations have nailed organizational design at the agile team level. But at the team of teams level, above that level, things seem to be a bit of a mess. And the different approaches that are being taken, the fact that people would copy paste the Spotify model and not even recognize the fact that Spotify has moved on from the Spotify model, I've noticed causing all sorts of problems. And the fact that we're not actually measuring these designs is a problem in itself, measuring the outcomes of organizational designs. So personally, on my own journey, I have found the work of the DevOps enterprise community as critical to the toolkit that I use for understanding how to configure, evolve, and measure the effectiveness of organizational designs. And in this talk, I'll share with you how I've used it and some profound steps and actually some really big missteps I've taken along the way. So this talk is about how flow follows form, and it really plays on this architecture concept of building architecture concept of form following function, where buildings actually look like their intended use. There's some very neat buildings in this presentation backgrounds. They're all art by Zaha Hadid, architecture by Zaha Hadid, who's actually the person who designed the BMW Leipzig plant, which was featured in Project to Product. So the point being that just as physical spaces have an impact on our creativity and our well-being, organizational designs have an even bigger impact on our well-being in our day-to-day work and our day-to-day life. So the key lessons I've learned is that the flow that we get from the organization, the happiness of the staff organization, is really a function of the structure of that organization. And so the question is, how can we improve this? And how can we design organizations that are better for their staff and for their customers? The thing that we've seen as organizations adopt this shift from project to product is that it is being used as a catalyst for change, I think, for some very important change. So for example, on the architecture front, the fact that you start thinking about software architecture as decoupling value streams to accelerate flow to the customer and to minimize dependencies is actually a pretty profound change in how we look at architecture. The fact that if bottleneck detection that comes from studying and understanding flow will actually mean that you automate everything away and you start making more and more of a business case for your DevOps transformation, for more automation, actually has a pretty profound impact on an organization. The fact that budgeting changing to become more iterative and more capacity based and not something where we're creating these projects and constantly throwing work over the fence is another significant change, as is reporting. The fact that with the change in budgeting, we actually need better visibility into our flow. Is our transformation, is our move to cloud actually producing the customer outcomes that we want? Is it producing the acceleration that we want to see in our flow metrics, or is it not? And do we need to adjust and pivot? And finally, organizational design. How do we, if we are not going to bring business and technology together, as we need to do in any project or product transformation, how do we actually design the organizations? What are the roles? What changes with what we've got today? So at the core of this shift is actually designing and understanding and measuring our value streams, how we deliver value to the customer, be that an internal customer, an external customer, or a business partner. And these value streams, they need to be aligned. So they need to be aligned to customer value. They need to follow that ideal of customer centricity. They need to be autonomous so that they're decoupled and can move as fast and for the needs of that particular customer. And they need to be cross-functional. We need to bring in together business, design, operations, and all of the different stakeholders needed to deliver value to the customer. However, that all sounds nice in theory. The challenge for the starting point of all of organizations, it's all different if you're building a new organization today, but we have to implement this on top of our existing organizational structures and designs. And often those have evolved around a very specific set of functions, and they've often evolved from a project orientation, not a product orientation. There are functional hierarchies, there are geographies to consider. In large and complex organizations, we have multiple sourcing partners. We're actually dealing with multiple organizations. And what we get from this is what's being increasingly called as this messy matrix. The fact that we want to have these very horizontal, these very flow-oriented value streams, but we have to implement them on top of our existing organizational structure. And the challenge is that these organizational designs tend to be all over the place. So models are changing. The way that hierarchies work are changing, but oftentimes organizations go through these large reorganizations, again, bring in something like the Spotify model, basically copy and paste that into the organization, and then actually measuring, did we improve things? Did we make work better for people? Did we remove burden? Or did we just introduce a whole other new set of bottlenecks? And one thing that I've found really fascinating is that technology companies just nail this. So the way that they continue to